Welcome to the From Concealment Podcast, the show for firearm enthusiasts who like to shoot, train, carry, and compete. Get ready for some shooting and sight, firearm and accessory reviews, and of course, insight on conceal carry. And now, broadcasting from behind enemy lines in the From Concealment studio, it's Pete Mitchell and Dan Sams.
Hey, Freedom Nation, this is Pete Mitchell.
And I'm Dan Sams today.
And we're back after a short little hiatus.
Yeah, dude. Sorry about being away. We had some stuff happening. Some good stuff for the most part, but yeah.
Dude, I tell you, this world we're living in, would you have ever thought, a couple of years ago, I saw this meme this weekend. It was like, if I would have told you 2 years ago that there's going to be a battle at Chernobyl that doesn't even make the news, would you have believed me? I'm like, oh my gosh, dude, that's so true.
Yeah. Oh man, there's so much to talk about, by the way, related to Russia and Ukraine, dude. There's so much going on there. We didn't even talk about this pre-show, but like, it's bonkers, man. Yeah, it's just worth not acknowledging. So like, I am totally fully supportive of the Ukrainian people defending themselves.
Oh no,
stinking tyrant, like he's a bad dude. But also everything going on with World Economic Forum, with NATO, with the UN, with all of the deep state and the Bidens all like laundering money in Ukraine and doing all kinds of other shady stuff. It concerns me. And so I have this thing where I'm like, anytime George Soros is for something, I'm giving a check. And I'm like, well, I'm still for these Ukrainian people defending themselves, but I don't think everything we're hearing is legit. So, well,
see, that's part of the problem. By the way, I killed my my video because you started to phase out there, and I don't know if the hamsters of Ohio need fuel to keep their little internet wheels
I'm doing the
turning.
Same thing.
Yeah.
I'm turning off my video. It's just and we have bad weather here, which shouldn't affect it.
Yeah. See, I mean, the thing with I totally agree. I first of all, I wouldn't trust anything coming out of Russia. So, Russia's sitting there going, oh, we're trying to help our communities where the Russian people want to leave Ukraine and want, us and blah, blah, blah. Dude, you're taking over the whole country. Like, okay, let's call it what it is. You're invading, you're taking over. But even Putin this last weekend saying, hey, these economic sanctions are basically declaring war on us. I'm like, great. Now, after we finish the zombie apocalypse, we're going into World War III. Yep. I mean, I'm like, this is just, it's one of those situations where I'm like, I can't believe this is what we've come to. But yet, I totally can believe it.
Well, and by the way, one of the reasons why we know something is going on is that they quit talking about COVID. Like they just it just stopped as soon as this thing started happening. And
interestingly enough, my good friend Martin Howie, who you know of, I don't know if you've met him, but he and I were talking this last week. His son-in-law died last year, and he died from, I think it was leukemia. Like he didn't know he had it. He waited too long, and basically within days of finding out he had it, he was dead. And he got written up as having COVID. And it was a COVID death that was on his death certificate. So his daughter, Martin's daughter, who was married to, his son-in-law, got like $9,000 because he had COVID when he died from the government. Now, his mother-in-law just died a couple of weeks ago, and she had COVID, and they didn't put it on the death certificate. And so no $9,000 to help bury her. And he's like, it's interesting to see how they were, juking the numbers before, and now they're juking them again another way to make it look like, oh, this COVID thing is passed. But the whole thing has been so shady, which you and I literally said from the very beginning when it was just in China. We're like, dude, what's going on here? Yeah. And I mean, we had no idea it was going to be like the big bell of anti-freedom that was going to be rung by this thing. But that's what ended up happening.
Doesn't it get kind of frustrating that all of our conspiracy theories come true? And it's kind of tiring. Like, it's hard to think up new ones, man. It's like, man, you're taking away all of these things because they keep coming up true. No, it's nuts, man. Well, we could go a long time on that, like, because that's where I'm like, there's a whole lot of communication happening to get us to think about very, very specific things. And I think the Ukraine-Russia thing becomes particularly complicated because there's some stuff that's legit. Like Russia is doing bad things. Russia is bad. Ukraine and their leadership has some real shady stuff as well. And we just acknowledge that. There's a huge like actual Nazi contingent there. And then you've got plenty of good, like America-loving people, good in Christians in Ukraine that have huge respect for, that are trying to do their best for themselves and their families. And so it makes the whole thing just complicated. And yeah, I don't want to, it's one of those where I'm like, my side is for the Ukrainian people. That's about the best I can do. And some for the Russian people who don't want the war in the first place. But man, I am upset about all the crazy things NATO is doing. That's just poking the bear. Quite literally.
What is NATO doing that's poking the bear? I haven't heard much about NATO and all.
So you look back at like 2014, was it 14 or 16? I think it's 2014. Ukraine democratically elected a leader who was pretty pro-Russia. And NATO's like, well, we can't have that, and took him out. And so you have a real situation.
What do you mean took him out? They killed him? What?
Deposed. It was a whole mess. Like, it's long story. So now what Putin is doing, Putin's quote unquote justification is that, like, well, Ukraine is no longer a free nation because you guys are messing with their elections. And so I'm going in to free them. Now we know that that's just his in. I mean, if that was all he's going to do, he would probably only take that. But like, NATO screwed up. Like, I mean, they gave him an excuse. And now we've got all this weird stuff happening on the ground that is just complicated. Like, I mean, I'm not going total conspiracy theory here, but like one of the big things is that Putin is attacking a lot of civilian locales. We're seeing like missiles hitting a lot of hospitals and, apartment buildings and all those kind of things, which is strange. Now, there are accounts on the ground, and we don't know, we can't verify it, but that are saying, no, there's actually some Ukrainian forces that are killing civilians in order to create a different kind of problem. And so that's probably not what's happening. But we do have this question now when that's coming up, and it's like, well, what does Putin get out of killing civilians? Like, his one play is that he's trying to say, well, we're here to help these civilians, which we know is a joke, but like, he didn't get anything out of killing civilians. It only makes things worse for him. And so I'm kind of looking through and I'm like, we got a mess. And this is what I keep landing on. We can't trust Russia because they don't have legitimate media. Right. We can't really trust Ukraine because they don't have legitimate news media. We can't trust the US because we don't have legitimate news media. And so we're left in this place where we're just watching all these things swirling around. And that is the perfect opportunity for bad dudes to manipulate things by doing something other than what they should be doing. And so that's where I'm in this, like, just frustration. Like, it's just, I can't get accurate news on it. And so the closest thing I have is some, videos on Instagram or TikTok, and it's given me something, but even that is out of context. We don't know how widespread. They can show me a video and say, here's Ukrainians feeding a Russian soldier that they captured and letting him call his mom, which is really nice. And I hope that's true, but we can't verify it. Like, could be a Ukrainian dude in a Russian military uniform. Like, I don't even know what a Russian military uniform looks like. So it's not like I would be able to tell the difference. Mm-hmm. Yeah. What I do know is this is careening us closer and closer to a World War III. All of my military, not all of, but many of my military friends are just kind of assuming that they're going to get called up. Like, I don't know if you heard the latest, but now they're talking about Poland providing MiGs and other like military whatever to Ukraine, and then the U.S. is planning to backfill that with our own like fighter jets and whatever to Poland. So we're not directly giving to Ukraine, but we're helping Poland give weapons to Ukraine. And it's like, okay, like whatever, but it's getting us one step closer to actually getting involved in actual fighting. And it's
just like Charlie Wilson's war.
Yeah.
With Afghanistan. Yeah. Let's arm the Taliban as they fight the Russians.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's without a doubt, man. I look at it and I'm like, okay, well, this gravy train that we've had of a world had to come to an end. I just didn't want it really coming to an end now,
Yeah.
I didn't want it coming to an end with my kids so young, but the one cool thing that I'll say, the one good thing I should say, that is a real benefit to the United States is basically being positioned where we are, where, yes, we've got totalitarian Canada to the north, and then we've got Mexico to the south, and then we got all of South America, but it's not as easy as anyone in Europe who's like, okay, I got every other country around here that could just basically get to me by land. Like, you're only getting to the US by ship and by air, realistically. And I mean, that gives us a huge advantage as far as global politics are concerned, global war politics. And it's not like, China and Russia wouldn't have any problem sending bombers over to bomb us. They totally do it. I mean, without a doubt, but it's not as many, right? And then we've got our fighters that hopefully can do some damage back to their bombers and stuff. But I look at it and I'm like, man, this is just a crazy world we're living in right now. And like, have you noticed how COVID's totally gone? Like all the restrictions of COVID are being lifted. Like, my kids got to wear masks this week and then it's done for them. And I'm like, I don't understand. Like, did you realize with the Canadian truckers that people are done with you? They're just done. And then you and I were talking before this about the Freedom Convoy, the U.S. truckers, which I almost kind of feel like they waited too long to do it. Like, they're doing it now when basically the world is open back up. Why didn't they do it sooner? But I mean, they were taking the lead from Canada and all of that.
Oh man, the whole thing, it just concerns me, man. I don't know. Yeah, I'm with you on all of it, brother. Yeah. I'm starting to, I don't know. You ever feel like, I don't know if you ever, when you were a little kid and you were like on a wagon at the top of a hill, and wagons are hard to steer anyway. And you think, you know what, I'll just kind of, ease my way down this hill. And then it starts going faster. And at some point it's going so fast, you can't control it. And then you can't really steer it because like even a little bit of steering is going to flip you over. And you're just like holding on for dear life because it's like, I'm not in control of this. But here we go. And it's kind of how this is starting to feel like, well, probably going to have World War III. It's probably going to happen. My cousin he's in the military and let's just say his role involves dangerous combat related stuff. And I'm like he went to, Afghanistan after the fighting was bad and got out before, Biden screwed everybody over there. But, man, my concern for his well-being is much higher right now. My brother, I've got several other people that I know and love very dearly. And I am concerned for them, not to mention for our country, not to mention for freaking $4 gas here. I don't even know how bad it is out there. You're probably going to be $7 gas,
$5.50 to $6. Somebody posted a $7 picture, but it's on the internet. So who knows if it's legit or not? Yeah. I just wouldn't be surprised because it's California and it's Northern California where it's already more expensive. So yeah, it's so bad here that it's like, I was telling my wife, I go, look, we've always bought Chevron gas because we have a Chevron card and we just pay it off every month. I'm like, dude, we're now going to Costco, which apparently is Chevron gas. My buddy works for Chevron. It's like Costco is the one who actually does most of the Chevron, does most of the Costco gas stations. And I'm like, well, we have to start going to Costco and those freaking awful lines that they have there. But right now, Costco, the cheap place, is $4.79 a gallon. And I'm like, this is ridiculous. I got to get out of the state. The state has lost its mind. And part of that is because California has its own mix of gas, because we want our gas to be good for the environment. So we're the only state that has this. So they got to make it up special for us. And we got refineries right here. There's no reason why our gas should be so much more than everyone else. And then we have like over 50 cents in taxes. And we have a new tax going in, I think, July 1st on gas. That's going to push it up even higher. Welcome to California. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. It's infuriating because that directly affects people like you and me, right? Like people don't realize how that makes everything else more expensive. And I mean, I don't have huge margin. I do okay. The Lord always provides for me, but my family and I are feeling it, right? We're feeling it and I don't do big traveling places all the time, but we're feeling it in the gas prices. We're feeling it in the inflation. We're feeling it in cost of food and everything else. And we're getting by. We're trying to be smart. We're stockpiling a little bit, right? But I'm thinking about people with less margin than me. Like, what are they doing? Because the reality is inflation goes up before their pay goes up. And I can adjust my prices. My wife and I both in our businesses, we can be like, oh, we're going to have to increase our prices because this is what's going down. But the guy who works a regular, 9 to 5 job, he's got an annual salary that stays the same. That guy's screwed, right? And most businesses that give raises are giving something like 3 to 5% raises, right? Well, inflation is at roughly 10% now. So like your raise that you got in December isn't going to touch it.
Right.
And so the American people are getting screwed over. And my hope is they just get mad enough to do something about it.
Well, and the funny thing is people don't realize how they factor in inflation is not based on what you and I actually buy. Like Correct. What they're using is stuff that we don't buy. I can't remember the gal who first came up with the calculation, but like her story was she was from Germany or something like that. And, this is what we did in Germany. So, but it's not based on the real stuff that you and I actually spend our money on. And it's really much higher if you look at what you and I are spending our money on: food, gas, heat, electricity, all that type of stuff. And it's like, it's crazy. It's so bad right now. I'm looking at this going, okay, if a Republican doesn't win the White House in the next election, there had to be cheating, because there is no way anyone in their right mind could possibly overwhelmingly vote for a Democrat again after this. Like, it's not even possible. Like, you can't do it. You have to look at the world and go, okay, we're pretty much screwed now because of Biden. So we can't vote for him again. Like, you can't. You can't do it.
Yeah. I always like to remind everybody, do you remember when gas prices were this high before? And it was during the Obama administration when we were dealing with the same kind of policies. It's much worse now than it was then as far as policies go. But we more than doubled the price of gas in a year, for crying out loud. This is insanity. I am mad about it. Like this, it's unjust weights and measures. Like biblically, this is against God's law. That simple as that. That's inflation and all that comes with it is against God's law. Again, I'm against all the taxation, and I'm serious, like biblically, it is unjust. It is ungodly. It is sinful. And so I'm like, at some point, I'm like, what are we even doing, man? Like at some point, the American people have to hit this place where we're like, I'm working harder than ever. My money is worth less. I'm getting taxed more, and I'm getting squeezed into this tiny little box where at some point they're going to be like, oh, I just can't provide. And I hope they get mad enough to do something about it.
Well, and the ironic part is they sit there and they go, oh, look, I mean, you've seen the Occupy Democrats. It's either Instagram or Twitter feed where they're like praising Ukraine for giving out 10,000 fully automatic AK-47s to civilians.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, you guys are the same ones that say we shouldn't have guns. This is why we should have guns. Yeah. This is one of the reasons, not the only reason, but one of them. What if, what if a country decides to invade us? As stupid as that would be because of all of the guns we do have, the civilians, but it could happen. And even, Biden sitting there going, oh, I think if you're going to take on the government, you need some, F-14s and maybe some nukes or no, apparently not. Apparently AK-47s are doing the trick.
Doing just fine. Here's what I would say that is worth considering. You talk to some of these dudes that were, let's just say some of my dear friends from the military talk about the U.S. military owns the night.
Yeah.
And
right now,
when the U.S. military shows up, they show up with nods, right? And they put a whole hurting on a whole lot of people. Not to mention there's like illuminating drones. Like they can fly over an area where they know people are and just light it up like daylight all in a sudden. And in a matter of seconds, take everybody out. So one thing I would say, if we were having to face that kind of an attack, great value in having some kind of night observation devices, right? But lay that aside. Ukraine and Russia, it's not that's not available there, but it's just a different thing that's going on. And so you do have this opportunity to be like, you know what, I'm, dude with an AK-40s or AK-47 can defend a lot and can hold back a whole lot of hurt. And so, yeah, you're exactly right. We don't need the jets and planes, but I would say get into night vision somehow, even if it's just a light, even if it's just like a flashlight on the front end of your AR. You need some way that you can operate at night. But yeah, you're exactly right, man. If the Ukrainians can hold off Russians with some AKs, we could hold off a whole lot of hurt with some M4s.
And it just makes me think too about the need for, like night vision and then even storing it in, some sort of Faraday cage, some sort of Faraday box. Because too many of those books I've been reading thanks to you. I'm like, man, the threat of an EMP is just all too real, especially when you have a country like ours that is so reliant on the technology.
Yeah.
Like an easy way to take us out is an EMP.
Well, and so here's what people don't realize. When a lot of times when people think of night observation devices, they think of they watch Zero Dark 30 and SEAL Team 6 had those like quad, things that are like, those are like 50 grand, right? I mean, they're like ridiculous, or maybe they're 20, 30. And you can't really get them as a civilian. I mean, it's virtually impossible. Like that's kind of out of reach, but you can get pretty decent green phosphorus Gen 3 night observation devices in a, monocular instead of a binocular style. You can do something for right around the $2,500, $3,000 range. Well, that puts it in range for a lot of people. Now, admittedly, you're doing it pirate style and you've only got one over one eye, but you kind of adjust and you can do a whole lot with that. That opens up a game for you, right? For a 9K, you can get your, articulating, binocular style night vision, Gen 3 green phosphorus, and you're in a pretty good position to operate at night. And so, 9,000 is out of my reach for now. I mean, I could go and put that on the credit card, but it would be unwise for me to drop that kind of money right now. I'm just going to say,
why did you get night vision? What's this $9,000 charge?
Now, here's the thing. If things go as they have been going and we start careening towards a certain edge, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to max the heck out of a crap ton of credit cards because I'm like, it's all going to burn now anyway. Right,
it's all gone.
I'm going to, all right. Like that's probably what I would recommend. Like burn up those resources and say, screw it. Cause if it's all going to fall apart, then might as well have some nods. But I would say, it's not crazy talk to start thinking about getting into the night vision game for $3,000. Right. And that's a lot of the Freedom Nation. That's something, I mean, that's a major purchase, but that's not out of reach for most of us, right? Start setting aside a couple of $100 a month and you're there before too long. So something to consider. That's a total side note, but all that said, good fighting weapon gets you far.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So tell me about your birthday present. You're mentioning you were expecting something.
Yeah. So here, to set this up, my wife has this rule that if you figure out what you're getting for a gift, she takes it back. Like, that's just hard line. She's like, that you figure it out, I'm taking it back. So let's just say over the years, I've been real careful to not notice certain things or to try to quickly forget certain things that I might see, say, coming into an Amazon box or whatever. So Christy's asking me, hey, what do you want for your birthday? And normally birthday, like, it's like a $50 art deal, right? She'll get me a bottle of scotch, or she'll get me something, something nice that I wouldn't necessarily get myself, but we don't spend crazy money on birthday, which is just not what we do. Christmas, we do a little bit more, so I'm like, well, here's what I want. I'm like, I'd like the Mantis X10 system. And I'm explaining what it is and trying to sell her on it, but at the same time saying, like, I know that's out of like the price range, here's some stuff in the $50 range I would like. Well, so soon after, she gives me the rule. She's like, do not go on the front porch. Now, my wife has no idea how big the Mantis system is. She's probably assuming that it's going to come in this big box and that it's a whole thing. Right. So she's like, don't check the front porch, which is where, Amazon or whoever would leave their stuff. So I'm like, no problem, but I still need to check the mail, because my mail is where I get paid in the mail. And so I go out and check the mail, and I notice this nice little box in there. And I see it's addressed to my wife, and I have a pretty good guess that it's probably that Mantis system, but I'm doing my best to just not look at it, not pay attention, whatever. My daughter comes in, looks at the stack of mail, and I've intentionally put the letters on top of it, so I'm not looking at it, not seeing it. I'm going to let my wife find this box. And my daughter's like, hey, what's this box? It's written to mommy, and the return address says Mantis. What's that? Nice. And so I'm like, oh, dang it. So Christy is like, well, looks like I'm going to have to send it back. No, she's joking. So I've been playing this game where I'm like, well, I'm assuming that you've sent it back. And so I am in no way expecting to get that as a gift. Well, today's my birthday. And so we'll see what happens.
Is today your birthday? Today's your actual birthday?
Today is the day.
Oh, well, happy birthday. How old are you now?
Thanks. I'm 41, man.
Woo!
Yeah, man, I'm getting up there, man. Letting that gray hair come into the beard, living the old man life right now. So
I like it.
Yeah, so we'll see what happens. I'll let everybody know next week if I ended up with the X10. And man, I'm excited. I've got dry fire practice to do. I've got all kinds of stuff. It's good times, man.
I dig it. I'm excited for you. I got to get one, and then we can compete against each other in the app, apparently. Yeah, buddy. Well, and other fun things. I got myself some tactical boots over the weekend that I'm kind of excited about. So we'll see how they do. They're Rockies, so they're not super high end boots. I was looking at some really, really nice ones, and man, I was kind of surprised. Some of the higher end ones just weren't what I was looking for. I'm sure their long term last is going to be a little bit better, but these Rockies fit nice, and I'm digging them. So I might be able to give us a decent review on that later, but definitely digging them, especially for the price. They're only like $100 and change. Not bad. Cool. So yeah, we'll see how things go with that Mantis. What my wife's threatened to do is just keep it for herself, and so she'll be playing with it. Nice.
Yeah, I wouldn't put it past her. She's cool.
Nice.
Like that. So yeah. And anything else we should talk about, Pete? I feel like Ukraine and Russia gives us a big enough mess right there.
It does. We didn't really talk much about this. I'm just kind of the Freedom Trucker Convoy. I'm like,
yeah,
there's really no news about it other than I typed into Google to search. Very first article comes up, it's an opinion piece. And here's the headline: absurd trucker convoy jamming up Capitol Beltway has me rooting for higher gas prices. I mean, dude,
dear.
That's clearly a liberal. Well, it's USA Today, so of course it is. It's like, first of all, like I said before, I don't know why the trucker convoy, I don't know why they're doing it now. Like, it was one thing when all this crap was going on, but I think pretty much everyone is like, dude, we're losing the midterms big time. We better change what we're doing because people are done. And Fauci is pissed because he used to be, on TV every day. And now it's like, don't bring Fauci on, keep that guy hidden.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, it's just interesting. This is all about politics. We said it from the beginning. It's all about politics. It is not about health.
Yep. Cool. It certainly is. And I think, so with the convoy thing, I'm with you that it's like, well, they planned this thing, and then now the COVID narrative is changing, and literally, we're talking like overnight. And Ukraine and all that's happening there has, let's just say how it's being handled politically is very strategic, and they're happy to let us forget about anything COVID related. But a couple of things. One is, if you followed all that was going on in the Ottawa trucker thing, which I have, let's just say, friends of friends there. Like, I saw a whole lot of eyewitness video, and some of the police brutality, like the horse, trampling the older lady, that's just tip of the iceberg, man. Like, I listened to eyewitness there. Actually, it was a pastor who was like, man, they were pulling dudes out of trucks, and even guys who were voluntarily like, hey, laying down, hands behind their head, so that they can like get peacefully arrested. The cops were still beating them. This one pastor, he's like, I laid down next to a trucker, and just like, all right, we're getting arrested. And he's like, I offered absolutely no resistance. And he's like, they kicked me, they beat him. And he's like, we were seeing like truck by truck, they were, either smashing in the window or somehow getting the door open, pulling a guy out, just beating him like he was Rodney King. And it was just, they were like, it was awful. And so what was interesting is this same pastor got arrested or got fined and the whole thing for having church. But he says, for years, like when we would see a cop, I was teaching my kids to respect them. And so he's like, I would be like, you want to go and say hi? And he was like, I would take my kids over and let them say hi to the police officer and talk about how the police officers do this, this, and this, and we're thankful for them. And this dude said, I will never look at police officers like that again in my life. And he's getting it. And so just something to pay attention to. I don't want to be disrespectful of police officers. I know some good guys, but man, any cop who would do what they did,
which is honestly, it's every one of them. And they would always fall back on, well, it's my job. I'm just doing my job. I mean, there is like hardly anyone that will stand up for justice.
Yeah. And the ones who do tend to do it in a very mitigated manner. It's kind of like, well, I'm not going to enforce that mask order, and I'm just going to hope my boss doesn't notice that I didn't do that. Right. It's the little things. And there's only been a couple that we've seen that took any kind of a meaningful stand, and they were fired and forgotten about right away. So this is the thing I've been saying for the last few years, that like what's happening is as the laws and the mandates and whatever become more totalitarian, the good guys get out as quick as they can, because they're like, I don't want to enforce this, I don't want to do whatever, or they get fired, which very seldom do they stand up and get fired. But now what you end up left with is the brown shirts, right? Like, that's who's left. And I don't want to like say, yes, I'm sure there's a few guys, I'm sure your nice uncle is not going to do it, but nope, probably he will. And so that's I think we've got to start looking at them completely different, because they're probably going to enforce the worst of it, because that's what we saw in Canada. That's what we've seen here. And juxtapose that against what we saw during the Black Lives Matter riots, where there was actual violence, right? Like actual, like, use Canada as a great example.
Cities on fire.
Right. and the cops would tend to retreat again and again and again, to some degree, understandably so, and then barely any response. Like, you didn't see police coming out and stomping out in force. And you juxtapose that with in Ottawa, where you had like the people there were completely peaceful. Business improved in Ottawa while they were there. They picked up trash on the streets, like everything was better, right? And yet they pulled people out of their vehicles and beat them. That tells you everything. If Black Lives Matter can burn down cities and throw, water bottles full of cement at the cops, and they can do whatever else, but peaceful citizens just trying to be heard get beaten and arrested, it's all you need to know, man.
Yep.
Everything you need to know right there. And so hopefully that tells you exactly who the enemy is. And don't forget about that. Which this brings me, this is related to one other thing. I think we should just mention this because we were talking about the whole COVID mandates and all that, because what we've got going on with the trucker convoy in the US coming across feels a little late because like they're so quickly lifting the mandates. I think there's still some value in it though, because we still lost all this freedom, right? And what we know about totalitarian regimes is they push right up to the edge, right? Before you get pissed off enough to do something. And then they ease back, right? And what they've done, though, is they've moved the line. They've moved right up to the point you were willing to do something. And then right before you do something, they ease back, and all of a sudden, like, we're not putting Fauci on the news anymore. We're not doing anything. Everybody's free. You don't have to do masks anymore. But like all these other, like the precedence is there. So next time they're going to be able to push the line a little bit further. Right.
Well, and probably it's never been more evident than in our own gun laws with the NFA Act, and then Reagan banning machine guns, and it's like they just keep taking one little step, and now they're like, oh, we got to get rid of assault rifles. This is a scary thing, and it's like, yeah, if they would have started out going, hey, we're going to go after every rifle out there, it never would have happened. But they didn't. They started small. Oh, we're just going to make you register if you want to have these type of weapons and pay a tax. And it just kept getting worse and worse and worse.
Yeah. Yeah, man. So hopefully we're paying attention to what's happening. And that's where I'm hoping that the trucker convoy makes a statement, at least. I wouldn't mind if they got things a little spicy down there. But that's neither here nor there.
I don't think it's going to happen, though.
I don't think it is either. One of the things that we're dealing with, I'm just going to be straight up on this, but the reality is many of the Trump-loving Republicans are still ignorant about what actual freedom is. And while I am glad they take a stand against tyranny as it is enforced by Democrats, they swallow globalism whole sometimes. They will get right on board with all kinds of other totalitarian things, and they have no conception of what it means to be constitutional. And it's scary to me because there's a whole different kind of tyranny that can be enforced in that way. And it might be a little less painful for guys like you and I, but only short term. And because every time there's a precedent. And so like you have a left boot squishes you on the neck a little bit, and then the right boot comes and does the same thing, but a little bit worse. And then now that precedent's been set. And so now the other boot comes, and it's like, no matter how you look at it, it's still tyranny. And it's like in going back and forth between leftist tyranny and right-wing tyranny somehow makes us more susceptible to tyranny in general, because we're like, well, at least it wasn't that guy. Now we're like, well, at least it wasn't that guy. And I'm like, I would much prefer the Republican tyranny over the leftist tyranny, but I'd rather have neither.
Right.
And it's frustrating about what's being allowed. And even, I look at things that Trump did with his executive orders banning slide fire stocks. And I'm like, what in the crap? Right. Or what we already talked about, you already mentioned, like Reagan and the NFA. I'm like, what in the heck? Like these guys took away some of our most fundamental rights more than any leftist did.
Right.
Screw them. So anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's that. Sorry.
That's all right, man. Why don't you give Lake Erie their plug?
Yeah. So, you guys, I know I've been talking about it a long time, but let's just say something real exciting is about to happen. We know that the new facility is in process. I'm going to have some real exciting news real soon about that. So keep your eye on learms.net, Lake Erie Arms. We'll have some really exciting news soon. And in the meantime, come and support the place. Buy some guns, buy more ammo, get some training. You need it. It's going to be worth it. Check out learms.net.
Cool. All right, guys. Well, we'll be back next week with another update on the world superpower trying to take us over. All right, man. We'll talk to you later. Take care, everybody.
All right. Take care.
You've been listening to the From Concealment podcast with Pete Mitchell and Dan Sams. Be sure to tune in next week for more gun talk. Also, check out the From Concealment website for more shooting-related goodness at FromConcealment.com.